Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 333. I was black here. My opponent kicked off with e4. I played e5, and we get into the Scotch game. And one of the reasons why I decided to upload this game and do a postmortem anyway is I haven't had a chance to really dissect the Scotch opening. So since it's such a short game, I'll spend a fair amount of time on the opening and then take it up to the short disaster that it ended it. So d4 is the Scotch game, and black almost always takes. It's the best move, and no reason not to take. So typically knight takes back, and now you have two ways to play, two main ways. But maybe first, let's take a look at this bishop b4 line that Chess Explained likes to play. Notice that knight f6 and bishop c5 are the top choices of the engine, and also of the opening book, and bishop b4 is the third choice, but all of them are playable. They don't give any special advantage. So the bishop b4 check, the idea is to provoke this move c3 so that the knight can't come to c3, and then drop back to c5. So you're into the bishop c5 line. And, the normal moves here, white will defend the center with bishop to e3, and then black can play bishop to b6. Yeah, the bishop is a little bit loose on c5, so it wants to get to a more secure location. And then there are different ways that white can play from here. There's knight f5. There's queen to g4 even, which is interesting. Queen g4 at least would put a stop to the idea that Chess Explained has in this position of always playing queen out to h4 or g5. He likes to play those moves. So knight f5, queen g4, or knight takes c6. The chess engine likes knight takes c6, but this is something the player with the black pieces is not afraid of because these pawns come towards the center and give black a little more influence here. So the trades are not anything to be afraid of. It's not bad for white per se, but it's not playing for any advantage. So that's a fine way to play, and pretty similar to the way I played in the game, which I just go bishop c4 bishop c5 rather directly. But there's one other line while we're talking about the Scotch opening that it's interesting to look at. It's famous for its tactical nature. The engine likes that, thinks it's the best way to play. So I looked at it and decided it was simpler to play the bishop c5 line, so that's what I play. But this is playable. You attack the pawn, and then the idea is that white wants to get in this move e5, which you can't play right now because you would just take it. So he takes off your knight first, and you take back with the b pawn. You want to keep your pawns in the center. I suppose let's check. If you take with the d pawn, is he just going to trade queens here? Yeah, just trade queens and take away your castling privileges, and white has a better game here. So you don't want to take with the d pawn in this case. You take with the b pawn, taking towards the center, and you have the idea of playing d5 later, maybe to contest the center. But white strikes first with e5. And now here's the first interesting move, you might say. You pin the pawn. You don't move the knight, you pin the pawn. So this is your first pin. There's another one coming up. So queen e2 breaks that pin. And then so the knight goes to d5. And then c4 attacks it. And here's a second pin. Once again, you don't move the knight, but you pin it with bishop to a6. Here's your second pin. And then b3 is the main line. And then here, what's g6 or castle's queenside? A very funny position. So if you can remember those two pins, you can apparently get a decent position out of this. But this looks like a hard position to play to me. I have no idea what black is really doing in this position. And he does eventually have to move this knight away. I guess the queen's going to move and the knight will be hanging. So I just found it easier to play the bishop c5 line. So we back up to the Scotch game. So starting with d4, that's the Scotch game. The exchange happens, and then bishop to c5, just putting immediate pressure on the knight and asking white how he's going to defend. White can take right away, and then there's one cute trick to show you here, which is you don't have to take back right away. You can throw in this move queen f6, threatening checkmate. So he has to respond to that. He has no time to save his knight. queen d2 is the most common way to save it. I guess queen f3 could be played. And then taking with the d-pawn is possible here, opening up this file without suffering the queen trade. So that's something to think about. You can also take with the b-pawn here as well. But then there's not as much point to that move. Queen f6. Queen takes c6 is also a way that I've played it. And you don't suffer any pawn damage at all, and your queen is fine over here. So all of those are different ways you can play it. But anyway, that queen f6 is a nice tempo move to keep in mind if anyone ever tries. If you're trying out the bishop c5 line and they grab the knight. So slightly more popular is to play bishop e3, defending the knight and indirectly attacking this pawn. It looks like queen f6 is playable here, but I always just drop the bishop back to b6. And this leads to a comfortable position, and it has a lot of similarities to the bishop b4 check line that we looked at earlier. So after this, my opponent played bishop c4, a bit of a rare line, and we're pretty much out of the book at that point. So we can look at the game from here on out. I could just play d6, but it occurred to me that I can play knight f6 here, attacking his pawn. He can't really advance it because I'm covering that square. So knight f6. And looks like this was a good move, knight c3, defending it. And now, right here, you have the center fork tactic. So it's something you might want to think about. But it turns out it's not good in this position. So it's one thing to think about a tactic and notice it, and it's another thing to play it. So always be sure to calculate these tactics out before you play them. So if you happen to go for the center fork tactic right here, knight takes, and then the pawn here, forking these two pieces. White can drop his bishop down to b5. Now you need to take the knight to get your piece back, and it looks like everything's fine, right? You've just won a piece. A pawn. Got your piece back and you're a pawn up. But you've got a problem with this knight here. This knight is under attack by two different pieces, and this all goes with tempo. Knight takes c6, hits the queen. You could throw in queen takes d1 or not. It doesn't really help. Or you can just take immediately. And bishop takes c6 is the main point. So after that tactic where you win a pawn, you lose the exchange or more. It looks like he's picking up a whole rook here. So not good. So in this position, grabbing the pawn there and trying to play the center fork tactic is not a good idea. And in general, you have to watch out for the center fork tactic whenever this bishop has a move that it can make with tempo. Sometimes it can take a piece, or same with the knight. If the knight can move with tempo, taking a piece, that can also get you in trouble. But in this case, the move with the bishop was coming here and threatening this knight, which is in a bit of trouble after the d-pawn moves, creating a pin. So center fork trick, not good here, but castling is fine. And my opponent castles, so all this is good. And we are looking forward to an even game. d6. I couldn't get in the move d5. He's just got that square too firmly under his grasp. He's got three attackers on it, and I only have a knight and a queen supporting it. So it's just not happening. So I settle for the d6 push. Now he decides to trade. So this is a bit of a mistake. Probably queen d2, just continuing to develop white's pieces is the best way to play this. The black player always welcomes these trades. It brings pawns towards the center, and both sides are, white is taking away two of black's developed pieces, but he's giving up two of his own developed pieces. So it's not like he's gained any edge in development through those trades. He's just helped black out a little bit by opening up the A file for the rook and bringing some pawns towards the center. And, this pawn structure may look a little bit awkward. But black can live with that and is actually slightly better in this position. So the game continues a4. But it's not like it's a winning advantage. It's just a minor point. But it gives some edge to black. So if you can avoid doing that with the white pieces, you're better off. And if you have the black pieces, you just know you don't need to be afraid of those trades. So I developed the bishop with tempo to g4. It looks like the engine prefers the bishop coming to b7. Perhaps rook e8 first. So I play here. And he should probably just push f3. But he goes queen d2. All this is still in the range of close to even. Now I play rook e8, putting more pressure on this pawn. And he played rook f to e1, defending it. And I dropped the bishop back to e6, thinking that this trade would probably work out in my favor. It's still about even. Bishop takes, rook takes is fine. I was also thinking to take with the pawn. Bishop takes. Let's just take a look at this. Yeah, both of them are fine. Rook takes or pawn takes. The engine prefers rook takes. Maybe it's a little more active. Okay. So bishop d3 was played instead, avoiding the trade, which is still fine. And now I get the d5 move in. But this actually was a bit of a mistake. It looks like white can push on with e5 and maintain this pawn there. And so if he were to play f4, I think that's the key move, white would have a bit of an edge here. And I would have trouble justifying my play to this point, because I was equal or slightly better before. Now white has got the better side of equal. Okay, but he played queen f4. I developed my knight to c5. And was there something better? It's saying h6. Okay, c5. Queen e7. Okay, I'm not seeing anything really great there. I'm really not sure about the move h6. That seems kind of funny. That should be... Okay. Yeah, sometimes the engine takes a while to evaluate these positions, so it dropped it down. It was hard to see what h6 was really accomplishing. So it's still in the range of even to slightly better for black here, so maybe I'm giving a little something up by playing this move, but it's okay, knight c5. Trying to harass the bishop, and also I was worried about his queen coming over here and threatening checkmate, so I want to be able to swap off the bishop if that happens. He goes bishop f5, and now I missed this idea. This is an interesting one. I could have taken the bishop. This is not an easy combination to see, so I'm not going to do a quiz. This is a kind of a deep computer variation, but the reason this is good for me is because this pawn turns out to be weak. Now it looks like it's well supported. It's got a rook and a knight defending it, and a rook and a knight attacking it. And the rook is not, there's no pin on the rook because the rook is defended. But this exchange pulled the queen away, so there's one less defender right now. And then queen e7. So queen to g4, h3, f4. Let's say he plays f4. I think this was the line. And then g6, quick kicking the queen. I looked at this earlier. Queen, g5, d4. That's the idea. It's getting in this d4 move. And now the knight has to move away. And wherever it goes, then you can actually grab the pawn on a4. So not so obvious that there was no way to hold the pawn, but starting in this position, right with the trade, the engine thinks I'm just winning a pawn with that trade. So I just gave it one example line. You would have to evaluate that correctly in a real game. You'd have to look at all the possible lines, and because these aren't forcing lines, that would be very hard to calculate, I have to say. So I played queen d7, which is an okay move too, and I was just trying to encourage him to take, so that I could take back with the knight. This is a good square for the knight, blockading the pawn, and maybe it can jump to f4. Maybe it supports the push d4. Would be an interesting way to play, and the game would have continued for a while. Well, let's say, yeah, okay, bishop takes e6. We'll give an example of how the game might have continued. Bishop takes e6, knight takes e6, the queen could go back to d2. And have I got anything big here? I guess d4 once again is an idea. Got this knight on a good square, and I can just grab some space and have just a slight edge. So it's not like this is overwhelming. The material is even, but maybe I have a little more space here, and so slight edge for black. But a long game, and possibly an interesting one in store. If white had played the perfectly natural move, bishop takes f5. Instead, he played b3, defending his a4 pawn, perhaps sensing there was a weakness there. But it's no good because he needed to do something about his bishop. So he resigned here. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a short game, but gave me an opportunity to talk about the Scotch opening, the Scotch game, which is a pretty interesting opening. It was actually an opening that wasn't played for many years. It was sort of relegated to one of those old openings they used to play in the 19th century, and then Garry Kasparov in the 1980s. started playing it again. So that brought it back to people's attention, and you now see it more often than you used to. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and leave any comments you have in the section below. I will see you again soon. Bye.